listener production.
Hey everyone, it's Antoinette Lattouf here with the Weekend Briefing. And my guest today knows that being hot by Western ideals has really helped her career. She's super honest and introspective about how that obsession with hotness also led to crippling body image and mental health issues. Australian media personality and comedian Lucinda Price, aka Froomes, has now written all about it in this provocative, retrospective novel about the last 30 years of Western beauty standards. The debut author knows just how much it takes to be hot, and the mega influencer reveals just how much the quest to be attractive cost her. So we get candid about her eating disorder and how it was misdiagnosed for years. Also, Froomes reflects on cosmetic surgery she's had. Plus, she shares her views on Ozempic. And also, interestingly, why LinkedIn, as a social platform, needs to be given a little bit more credit. Later in the show, producer extraordinaire Helen Smith joins me for the Weekend List, and we're going to recommend a bunch of things to do. The Weekend List is where we recommend what to watch and do and see and eat, sometimes even what to feel, because, hey, we're generous like that. But first, here is my chat with Froomes. Lucinda Price, aka Froomes, welcome to the Weekend Briefing.
Thank you, Antoinette. How are you?
I'm really well, and I reckon I'm awarding you this. Nobody's given me the authority to award you this, but I reckon you have the coolest bio on your Instagram. I think it's on your Instagram, also on your website, because you describe yourself as a passion for taking the piss across multi-platform media.
Yes, including LinkedIn.
You do it on LinkedIn as well?
6,000 followers. Thank you very much.
Oh, very good. I just find like on LinkedIn, everybody becomes a sanitized, boring version of themselves, but you don't.
Totally. That's why it's fun to get in there and disrupt it, because it's such a weird like circle jerk. I love corporate language. Like I find it so crazy.
Oh, yeah. I love a humble brag. I love LinkedIn. I probably spend far too much time on LinkedIn because people are less crazy on LinkedIn. They're just a bit more narcissistic.
Totally. We're all just gassing each other up. Yeah, I love that we love LinkedIn. It's underrated.
We just like dove straight into LinkedIn. Okay, how about we pull out a little bit and talk about your career, because it's not a conventional career. As you say, you make content and you're a comedian across a whole bunch of different platforms. Where did your career start, and is it where you expected it to end up?
So it actually started within this building, but the Melbourne version. So I started as an intern and I did that role for like 7 months. And then they didn't want to give me like a full-time contract. So then I got a job at Pedestrian, which was kind of like my dream job when I was that age, because no one was doing news that had kind of like a funny bent to it.
Yeah, yeah.
And that really like is what got me onto this career path.
Yeah.
And I started as a writer, and I talk about it in the book because I started as a health and fitness editor, and it was kind of probably part of what led me down the path that I discuss in the book. But yeah, kind of started online journalism and got into presenting.
With a cheeky take, because as you say, like that wasn't really a thing. It was pretty straight down the line.
Yeah, it was so straight down the line. Even when I was at Southern Cross Austereo, like no one was doing videos of themselves. Like the only people who were posting videos of themselves were like random Americans or like really shameless people posting on Facebook. Like normal everyday people didn't really post.
Yeah.
So it's been very interesting seeing the landscape totally change, like, and kind of being at the coalface of it.
So as well as being health and fitness editor, you did the videos for Pedestrian, and then something happened to you, which unfortunately happens far too often in the media industry. You got made redundant.
Period. Which is actually amazing, because at the time I had already built an online audience. So I built kind of like this cult little base of, I call them employees when I got made redundant. So I kind of just like spun it into a funny thing.
Yeah.
I think I had been at the company for 4.5 years, and it's a youth media company. I was 25, so it was probably ready for me to go because of the audience I was trying to get. And because it's a really good company, like people stay there for 10 years. So I kind of needed the boot. And it was just the perfect time because it was during COVID. So everyone was on the computer. I think if it was to happen at a different time, if it happened now and I was reliant on that, it would suck.
Yeah. But it doesn't feel like I've been made redundant. I was made redundant in commercial TV and then ended up going back and working at that commercial network again. Like I think in the media, it's almost a badge of, not a badge of honour, but it happens so frequently. At the time, you don't think it's okay and you don't think your career is going to be okay.
No, it feels and it feels super personal when you're kind of like sharing your opinions as a job. It feels like an inside job sometimes, or it just feels shit.
Many people will know you as Lucinda Price. Arguably, many more will know you as Froomes. Where did the name Froomes come from?
It's a good name, isn't it?
It's great.
Do you think you remember it? Froomes.
More than Lucinda.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
It's my mum's last name. So it's her, it's her, I was going to say it's her maiden name, but she still has it as her last name.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a random name. I'd never met another Froomes and you don't really come across them.
No.
And I hated it growing up. It's my middle name. It's my actual middle name.
Oh, okay.
So my sister and I got my mum's last name as middle name. I thought it was so ugly. I was like, that's such a dowdy, weird name.
Yeah.
But then as I got older, I needed a handle for Instagram, and like my handles in the previous time had been like Turd City or like really random like stuff. And then Froomes just stuck. And it strangely, I don't know if the names made me become Froomes, which it just feels like it's melded into my humour and personality.
So you probably lent into the identity because it is quirky, it is unknown, it is uncommon. And do you think that by taking that on, that influenced your content?
100%. It's like clothed incognito or whatever it's called, when you like wear something, like you wear a lab coat and then instantly you feel smarter.
Yeah.
I think it's like that.
Well, what did Froomes make you feel?
Froomes made me feel like different and unique, because a lot of my work is kind of posting what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people like think the same things but they don't say them.
Yeah.
So it kind of like gives me license to say, yeah, whatever I'm thinking, and, you know, if you don't get it or if it doesn't land, that's okay because you're not meant to get it.
Yeah, right. Okay. So it gives you kind of like that edge and that confidence. From Froomes to fame, correct me if I'm wrong, but I have read that, you know, you love your fans, but you also love being famous and being well known. Is that true? And did you always know that you'd be famous?
Well, I think every kid dreams about it. There's research that backs it up. Like in 2007, researchers found that like the number one thing that kids wanted to be was famous, whereas previously it'd been like astronaut or this or that.
Bloody Kardashians.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm definitely a product of my environment, but also I had always wanted to be an entertainer. Like I loved Rove Live. I wanted to be Rove Live so bad. Yeah. And I would get upset. Like I remember watching and feeling upset because I was like, oh, it's all I want is to like be on Rove Live, but I don't know if it's going to happen. Like no one I know does any job in the media. Like I can't imagine how it would work. And then, I guess I've had opportunities come up and I've like taken them, I guess, and which is what you do. And the famous thing has always been kind of like a little kid desire. Yeah. But it really has been like a means to an end to have the ability to like entertain and capture someone's attention to then entertain them. Like I just want to be entertaining.
And so what is it that you studied or explored to get to where you are now? If you knew you wanted to entertain, but then you also kind of went on the quasi-journalism route.
Quasi-journalism is so savage but so true.
No, I mean it with respect, in that it's opinion. I mean, did you take quasi-journalism as a value judgment? Maybe it does sound like one.
No, it's funny. I used to call myself a journalist because so much of the job was like reading like the ABC and then putting a spin on it. And
or journalism. That's the other thing they call it.
Journalism?
Yeah.
Never heard of that. Okay, I like that.
Listen to me, journalism, I sound like a wanker on LinkedIn.
So I love it. I condone it because it's true.
I want to circle back to fame for just a moment, because Chapel Roan has recently said that she wants to step back from fame, and that, you know, the being in the public eye, the criticism, even experiences of stalking, and even that the money, she doesn't care if she doesn't have the money, that it's not worth it. Have you considered that sometimes there's an ugly price to pay for being public in any arena? And I'm not suggesting that you and Chapel are in any way the same, but have you ever had to stop and consider the pros and cons of being public?
Yeah, of course. But I feel like at least the stuff that I've been able to like put out till this point in my career, I've had a lot of control over it. Like I haven't really done any traditional media really where I've been forced to do something that I don't like. And I feel like when you have the license and the opportunity to put things out in the world that you love and that you're happy with, it's much more easy to kind of guide yourself against criticism.
Yeah, right.
Definitely it's fucking weird when you get DMs from people who are like I get DMs from men that are really scary. And sometimes it's scary if they're really nice but they're messaging me every day. Like I've got a couple of those.
Okay.
And that's kind of like, that's weird. But for the most part, the way that I guard myself against the idea of people not liking me or criticising me is just putting a real focus on my relationships in real life with my family and friends, because I think, and I write about it in the book about having an eating disorder, the online world became my everything, which would have been dangerous now because people are going to, you know, have a different opinion about you. And I was hinging my whole self-worth through the eating disorder on this kind of crafted image of myself. So coming out of that and being able to focus on my family and friends and putting them first, when I never did. I remember I used to think my family was so annoying. I was like, oh, I need to like get away. I need to go to Los Angeles and like start anew. I had this whole idea about becoming something different. So
what was the idea?
I don't know, just being like, I don't know, rich and famous and like a kid. It's like the kid ambition that I really internalized as a little girl.
Yeah, and so at that time you think your parents or your family's annoying and you want to go and do your own thing, and then you realise that they really are your foundations and you want to be around them.
100%.
Provided that they're not batshit, because some people have horrible family.
Like, yeah, they do.
Like I don't know about you, but I'm very blessed. Like my family for the most part are sane and nice, which is great, but not everybody has that. But for you, your family's been super important and grounding.
Yeah, I guess the sane thing probably doesn't apply to my family in a joking way, in a real way. But yeah, for the most part, they're really supportive of what I do. And I know at the end of the day, it's like my dad is really good in a crisis. Like he'll joke and kind of like sometimes not listen to you and stuff like that. But then if he'd always stop and help someone on the side of the street whose car's broken down. Like that kind of real, I don't even know what that kind of personality is, but
just community minded.
Yeah, in a way, in a kind of a backwards way. But no, I think I'm okay with it at the moment. I think Chapel Roan made some really great points, and I think that women celebrities and people who are gender non-conforming definitely cop it more than men. It's just the truth.
Yeah.
I'm sure there'd be research to back that up, and it's like the lived experience of me and many of my friends.
Yeah. And I just feel I need to clarify for a moment in case my family are listening or people. I do love you, family, and whether you're sane or not or have a raft of mental health issues like I do, you're still wonderful the way you are, and there's nothing wrong with that.
100.
So that way I'll still be invited to Christmas. Let's talk about your book.
Yes.
All I ever wanted was to be hot. Self-image, beauty ideals, and desirability. Who's the book for?
The book is for, when I started writing it, the person that I was about 2 or 3 years before I started writing it. There's kind of two prongs to it. The thing that I'm the most passionate about probably is reaching people who are stuck in the disordered eating cycle and can't see a way out. And they're just consumed by thoughts of food in their body. So it's for those people to be kind of a beacon, if I could be so bold as to hope that I could be that, to be like, there's actually a way out of it. Like you don't have to, there is a way, it's really hard, but there's a way for that to not be your whole life. Because when I was really bad, I was like, I've opened this Pandora's box of a disordered kind of mind when it comes to food in my body. How could I ever get past it? Everything's ruined because all I can think about is this thing. So yeah, I think it's for people who relate to me 3 years ago, but also I want it to be entertaining. It comes back to not necessarily wanting to be famous, but wanting to have people's attention so I can be entertaining. That's kind of part of the title, is I want it to grab people's attention and then I can get through and be entertaining.
What were you like when you described that person and that disordered eating 3 years ago? Explain it, a day in the life, or what it would be like around mealtimes.
A lot of worry and consuming thoughts about when I'm going to eat. So just always thinking about the next meal, what I can and can't eat. It isolated me from friends. I couldn't go out and have meals with people without obsessively checking the menu, which I think a lot of people do even when they're dieting, which I am maybe of the radical belief that even dieting is possibly problematic. A lot of people would have different opinions about that. I think I articulate it well in the book more than I could on social media or on a podcast. That's why I wrote the book.
Yes.
It's because I felt as though a lot of these ideas that I believe in are harder to get across in these kind of shorter form arenas. So yeah, it just kind of looked like a lot of time alone, not wanting to hang out with people. So isolating myself, going for these really long walks where I just listen to music and think about myself. And it wasn't comfortable. I think people think that being self-centered or being obsessed with yourself and your thoughts is something that people who are not very smart or are vain do. But coming out of it now, I realize, that was kind of a survival mechanism because I couldn't think of anything else.
And you presented with a raft of symptoms to doctors, but it took a while for them to join the dots and be like, this is what we think you're grappling with. What was that like for you to to feel that, and I hate this expression because it's used in every true crime podcast, like fall through the cracks. But what was it like to feel that your health in many ways fell through the cracks of the system?
I think it's just indicative. I can see now it's indicative of the fact that so many people, even experts, don't understand eating disorders. They just don't. Research shows that. I guess because, I was presenting as having a mood disorder, like being depressed. And I think a lot of my family history also pointed to that. Like my dad's has bipolar 1, which can, look like having moments of depression or this or that. So I think when you have a family history, there's very convenient ways to diagnose you. And I think a lot of the behaviours that I was doing were in line with depression, which is what happens when you have an eating disorder in my experience is you withdraw, you are hopeless, you can't find pleasure in normal activities. So a lot of and there is overlap. Like I think there's definitely overlap. There's so many comorbid conditions when it comes to disordered eating. So I don't blame anyone for falling through the cracks. I think the one instance that I talk about in the book that stayed with me was when I saw a psychiatrist and we spoke through all these things. She knew my family history, so that was a very convenient diagnosis, as I said. She left the room to go and get the script for medication, and the intern leant over to me and said, "Oh, I actually think you have anorexia." And at the time I wasn't like, "Oh," I was like, yeah, like I did that. Like, look, I look sick enough that someone sees it. And I think because I was kind of coming into it then, I didn't realise that it was going to be this maze that I would then have to get out of. I just thought, oh, I'm dieting, right? This person can tell that I've tipped it over into this thing. I didn't think that anorexia was a big issue, really. I just thought this is what women in the media have. They have disordered eating. It wasn't until it got worse and worse in terms of the isolation that I realised, oh, shit, this is bad. I can't go on like this. The option is to find a way to get better, which was the scariest thing ever, or to just, I didn't have another option at that point. I was really bad.
If you're happy to share, what was it like to find, how hard was it to find a way to get better? Because as you say, this consumes your thoughts, your identity, your time. How did you make that shift?
I think it's both really hard and also really joyful. And I want to really illustrate that in the book because I think, especially when you're in a disordered frame of mind, recovering looks like the worst thing ever. Because you're like, if I recover, I might be able to get my thoughts back, but I'm going to look a certain way or I'm going to have to get rid of this identity. So it is a real, like you said, it's an identity thing. It was an identity thing for me. So I had to fully re-envision what my life would look like, which is really hard when you're in the grips of it. So part of it was finding the right support. I did a study through Sydney University called binge eating e-therapy because at the time when I was prepared to start properly recovering, I'd clicked over into binge eating, which is often what happens when you come out of a restrictive eating disorder is your body, after years of restriction, is begging for calories and begging for food and begging for all the things that you denied it. It's both psychological and
physical.
Physical, yeah. So it was getting the right support through that free clinical trial. And then, I was blessed to then be put on to the right kind of psychologist support, which I think it's really important that people go to. If you have an inkling that you have a disordered relationship with food, you need to try and find someone who has a specialty interest in it because many psychologists, well-meaning, don't actually understand it, I think.
Yes. Or that it could be a comorbidity. You could have depression as well as an eating disorder.
And oftentimes it can be harder to treat an eating disorder because you have to eat 3 times a day or more, whereas with something, depression is probably just as hard in many other ways, but you can't really take a pill to get out of an eating disorder because it is so ingrained in your society. Like depression can be ego dynastic. I don't know the word for it, but essentially being depressed isn't helpful. Nobody wants to be depressed, whereas many people want to look a certain way, which you need to get through an eating disorder. So that's why it's kind of a complicated thing where you have to really peel back all the layers and reconstruct your life.
As well as talking about your eating disorder and body image, you also talk about plastic surgery, and you've been open about your boob job, and you call the surgeon who did it Dr. Double D's. What are your views on plastic surgery now, and how do you feel about your breast implants?
Yes, so now through all the research that I've done, I realize, and what I'm trying to do when I'm doing press for this book is call it, for instance, like a breast augmentation, or call a nose job a rhinoplasty, because I think that especially when I got these things done, I was 17 when I had a nose job and 19 when I had breast implants.
Okay.
I thought of them as that, a boob job and a nose job. This is just a fun, easy thing to do. I didn't think that I didn't think about the magnitude of doing it.
It's serious invasive surgery. Yeah.
Literally, like it's a scalpel through your body. That's scary. I didn't think about that. I thought, I'm going under the knife. I'll wake up and I'll feel better again. So for me, I never thought that I would tell anyone about it. Like I struggle when I meet people to, it takes a while for me to tell people about it because I'm worried about people judging me or people thinking, oh, you must have been like fugly before or this or that. So I think now I want to like show that it is a serious thing. I don't really judge people who get plastic surgery. I think, unfortunately, it is helpful sometimes for people and you do get treated better when you look a certain way. Like that just is the way that things are built. But for me, I'm passionate about trying to show, especially with things that need maintenance, like breast implants or lots of other surgeries that you can get that require maintenance. I think that oftentimes in the heat of the moment and the excitement of thinking, oh, this is going to change me, my life's going to be so much better, you forget that, for instance, with breast implants, every 10 to 15 years you have to get them replaced. And then if you want to get them out, you have to get a surgery that will then essentially reconstruct the breast, get the nipple cut off, cut it so your breasts are never going to look like what they did before, which I didn't realise when I was 19. I didn't have the foresight to think about that.
One chapter that caught my eye, Ozempic. Talk me through what you've observed about Ozempic and what your message is there.
So the title is meant to be said, Ozempic, because in America they took that song and the artist,
and that's the jingle for it?
Yeah. So obviously paid a bomb to use that as a jingle.
Yeah, right.
So I thought that was funny. I had to put it in there. So I haven't used Ozempic and I worried about writing about it because I don't have lived experience. What I've tried to do with the book is really focus on my personal experiences and not speak for other people, which I guess I still am speaking for other people if I'm talking about particular experiences, but I've really made a concerted effort to.
Do you have friends or family that have used Ozempic? Because I know a whole bunch of people who don't have diabetes who use it for weight loss.
Yeah, definitely there's people. Not immediate friends, but lots of people. I'm passionate about it and I felt like I wanted to talk about it because when I was coming out of my binge eating disorder, a psychiatrist prescribed me an appetite suppressant. And even at the time, I knew that was the wrong thing to do. And I feel like we can't extract things like Ozempic and appetite suppressants from the thin ideal. And I think it's complicated. It's kind of like the cosmetic surgery. Like it's this ongoing thing that you often have to do. It costs so much money. And I think until we can move towards feeling like the thin ideal isn't everything, it is really fraught, I think, to take something like that. But I spoke through my research. I spoke to people who were on it for weight loss. I spoke to people with diabetes or the children of people with diabetes. And I don't really judge anyone who takes it. I judge the people who are making hundreds of millions of dollars off prescribing compounded versions of it for profit. And that I find weird because so many of them are dressed up as women's health and helping liberate women by letting them take control of their weight, which I just think is so backwards. And as someone who it's suffered through an eating disorder, I know that had Ozempic been available when I had an eating disorder, I would have grabbed that. I would have taken out loans to be able to pay for it, So I think it's very attractive. I think a lot of people have low levels of disordered eating and disordered thoughts around food. And so to have this convenient thing that you inject, it's very tantalizing. And I think there's an issue with that.
In your book, you detail when you returned to New York, you went there for a trip and you obviously had spent time there before, but that's when you were really struggling with your eating disorder. One of the things you observed, obviously you were happier within your skin and your health and mental health was in a better place, but you identified something that you probably didn't get as much of on this trip, and that was skinny privilege.
Yeah, skinny privilege.
What happened?
Well, when I went to New York for the first time in 2019, I was struggling with my eating disorder. It was a restrictive phase, so I was struggling with anorexia.
When you say the restrictive phase, does that mean just skipping meals and not eating much at all?
It can mean different things for different people.
Okay.
But yeah, I would walk around and I felt I think I was also like a little bit delusional because my brain wasn't working properly. When you're not eating enough, your brain actually switches over into not making the correct decisions. And for people, it can shrink your brain. It can do all of these things. So I was kind of delusional, but I'd walk around and, people would stop me in stores and like ask me to be on their blog. So I felt like Alexa Chung, like all of these kind of like desires that I had as a teenage girl were coming true. So it was a mix of being delusional, but then also, being very obviously treated differently. I think that happens to a lot of people. A lot of people who lose weight get treated preferentially, or they get complimented by people. So it also made me wired. Like, you can kind of get into this manic phase when you're not eating it. People talk about a hunger high. It's like a runner's high. So I was also operating on that. And I think when I had that energy and that kind of bravado, I was treated differently.
So when you went back, you weren't approached for blogs or invited to exclusive events and things like that? You felt a notable difference?
Yeah, probably a little bit. I mean, I was still a standard, quote unquote, standard size. So it's not, I think had I not been, I'd be writing a different book. But most people who've gone through an eating disorder that is where their weight has dramatically shrunk, I think would say that it's a very notable difference of how you're treated when you look a certain way, even if you look sick, because it's still seen as this, you've got incredible willpower. I wish I could have your willpower. And, I might not want to be as thin as you, but amazing that you can do this thing. People were obsessed with what I ate at work and stuff. They're like, how do you eat, insert what I ate every day? Or how do you do that thing? There was kind of this mystery around it. Whereas if someone's at a higher weight going through something like binge eating disorder, it's not valorized. It's not this thing that everybody wants to know about, which presents a whole different set of problems.
I can see that you're being really careful in the way you talk about disordered eating, both in your language and also in your detail. How conscious are you of the fact that you want to have important conversation without either triggering somebody or giving tips to somebody about what to do to get to the state that you were in?
Yeah. I've worked really hard professionally and personally when I was recovering from the eating disorder with specialists. For instance, like the Inside Out Institute of Eating Disorders. I've worked closely with them, and all the guidelines are very clear on what to say and what not to say. And I know that when I was struggling, I'd 100% listen to stuff. I became obsessed with eating disorders. Even when I was unwell, I'd become obsessed knowing that they're a mental illness. I'd read biographies of famous women who struggled with it. And
what were you seeking when you read those?
Most plainly, I would be seeking what weight they were, how they got there and how I compared. So if I was reading an American book about a woman, I'd figure out her weight, I'd plug in my weight and my height into kilograms, and then I'd compare myself for better or worse. So there's all these different ways. When your mind is hell-bent on something, it's like when you start thinking about Jeeps and then you see Jeeps everywhere. You'll find a way to trigger yourself, I think, because it's just kind of any excuse to keep thinking about food. So yeah, I've been careful with it because I know that, again, that person 3 years ago that I was is really vulnerable and is looking for an excuse to continue on the path that they're on. But I also I've worked really hard with these institutes to make sure that I'm not triggering people, but I also wanted to accurately depict and honestly depict what it's like to have an eating disorder, because I really do want to grab that person from 3 years ago, and I want them to say, yeah, I know I'm recovered, and I know that it seems like you might think that I totally don't get it, because how could have I ever recovered if it was really that bad?
Yeah.
I want to show them, no, I swear I was with you and I'm out of it now, like I swear.
And how did you bring your comedy and wit to this book, which is so personal but is also tackling something quite serious?
I think it's just embedded in the way that I write. Like, I write a newsletter. It's supposed to be weekly, and just the way that I write is very much in my voice, I think. So if you follow me and you're used to a certain kind of way of speaking, I definitely embed that throughout the piece. I think it's I think you can reach more people if you do have kind of like a lightness to your voice. And I've worked really hard to do that, because I think it is easy to become really sincere and earnest when you write something about this, but I kind of didn't want to do that because I wanted to reach people. So yeah, I'm not going to say, some things I've said, I think I might have even written in the blurb that it's a hilarious book. I wouldn't say it's hilarious, to be honest. It's like when people say they're really funny and they're not funny, it's kind of giving that. But definitely I like to think that I would have an entertaining turn of phrase. So I've worked on that.
You refer a lot earlier in our chat about that little girl at school and what she'd hoped, that dream of, being famous or moving to New York. What's that dream looking like now?
I'm having a book and I'm having a big party. Well, maybe I would have already had the party. Now, I think when I was in the eating disorder, and even when I've had other kind of like moments where I've been really low in my life, I've had these kind of like talks to myself where I've been like, I'll trade anything to feel normal. I'll trade anything to like be able to find this thing enjoyable again. It's this kind of like desperation. Similar to, and I refer to this when I was a kid, I used to get bad migraines. And I remember being in bed and I wanted to die and I would say, I promise I'll start eating fruit and vegetables. I promise I'll start eating fruit and vegetables.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the same thing. I think definitely I still want to keep, I love pushing myself and seeing how far I can take my career while still kind of like maintaining what I find is funny. I find it really rewarding. So I feel lucky that I can do a job that I feel as well like I'm respected and like people listen to me. So I'd like to continue that. But at the end of the day, I just want to be able to have a really good balance and feel happy and laugh every day. That's so lame, but I just want to laugh every day.
I love that. Laughing every day. I mean, who doesn't want to laugh every day? And I think sometimes people lose sight of simple things like you say, family, connection, laughter. This has been such a great chat. I've learned an enormous amount from you. Thank you so much for being honest and for being raw and vulnerable, but also really hopeful.
Thank you, Antoinette. Thank you for having me. I've been excited for this, a bit nervous, but yeah, I feel like I'm happy with what we spoke about. Thank you.
You did great. Thank you. That was Froomes, and if you're interested to read the book, it's available at all good bookstores, and it's called All I Ever Wanted Was to Be Hot. Weekend list time with Helen Smith. This is one of my favourite parts of the week because I am always hanging to hear what Helen Smith has in store. Every week she surprises me.
Hey, Antoinette.
Hi.
My first recommendation is a show that I binged like crazy over the past week. It's called Kaos, but it's spelled with a K.
Ooh.
And it's on Netflix. It's on Netflix and it's with, I know this actor as the guy who's like the older guy who acts with his hands. His name's Jeff Goldblum.
Oh.
You know that guy?
Oh, yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like really acts with his hands. And I'm just like, oh, that guy. But
Yeah.
he plays Zeus.
Okay.
So the whole thing is kind of a Greek mythology world. And it's like the humans are all living in a real life, like the gods are controlling everything. They all live for the gods. And when they die, they've been told they renew. There's the underworld. All the gods are like throughout, but it's this modern take.
Okay.
And it's actually really good.
And where can we catch that?
Netflix.
Okay. And is it a new series?
Yes, new series.
Okay.
And it's just like a bit of fun. And it does make you think, oh, this Greek mythology stuff, what's going on here? I was like, imagine if this is real life.
Yeah. Well, I love a bit of escapism and a kind of a mythological world at a time, especially when this world feels a little upside down, a little bit dystopian.
This does exactly that.
My recommendation is a little bit niche, but I can't get enough of him. He's an Italian rapper called Geolier. He has 3 million followers on Instagram. He's only 24 years old and he's from Naples. And I just love his music. I have no idea what he is singing or saying, but I have been told by cool Italian people that he is the hottest thing in Italy right now and in Europe. And so I just want to take a little listen to Geolier.
Tonight, stai triste perché rimane Monday. Listen un bottone per un replay. Per rivivere te cose insieme a me. Oppure per tornare a quando ero happy. Metti film paura non
Yeah, and so if you want another level of escapism, like nodding and chilling to something where you have no idea what they're saying, like I recommend that as well as this
level.
Greek mythology. I love Geolier. Don't know the subject matter, don't know the content, but, you know, it sounds good and it makes me feel good and we need more of that.
I love this. And even when I was in Spain and my friends, they, you know, can speak a bit of English, but not a lot. They would listen to English songs and sing along and they had no idea what they're saying. And I was like, oh yeah, I forget. Like, it's just music. Like, it's just this universal thing. And we're like, you know, whatever. It just sounds good. It sounds good.
Yeah, makes you feel good.
Okay, I love that. I'm definitely checking him out. My next recommendation is a sweet treat. So I love a sweet treat hack, like something that's yummy, but like not, okay, this is kind of bad for me, but like not, you know, the worst. So it's frozen chocolate peanut butter dates.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's those 3 ingredients you've listed?
That's it.
So you melt the chocolate.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So I have my dates on my little platter.
Okay.
You melt the chocolate, you go, wee, put the chocolate on top. Then you get some peanut butter, woo, put it on top, put it in the freezer, frozen, and it's amazing. It's so good.
And It's small. The dates are quite naturally sweet, so you don't need to have like a whole piece of cake to get a sugar hit. You have one date.
Yeah. Oh.
Okay, you should have one date.
Yeah, but I have maybe like 2 or 3.
Okay.
And they're so yummy. And yeah, I use dark chocolate as well. So it's like dairy free for me, which is great.
Nice.
Yeah. And it's just such a yummy thing. And I'm like, yum. I love it.
I have a cooking recommendation too. I'm not much of a sweets person, but I really recommend intergenerational cooking to preserve like family traditions and recipes. And I recently lost my uncle, who was the patriarch of our family because my grandparents have passed away. And what it made me do was I start thinking about life, and my parents are in their late 60s and 70s, and I was like, what happens when they're not here? And I started to panic.
Yeah.
And so all I've been doing is cooking with my mum, writing down her recipes because she doesn't follow cookbooks. And for some people, it might be preserving your ethnicity and cultural heritage through food. For other people who are like, I'm 7th generation English, everybody still has. It might be a quirky family tradition. It might be something grandma makes. It might be something that reminds you of the holidays or reminds you of home. And I just think that is so powerful, particularly in a world where we're more likely to live away from our family.
Yeah.
And so I have just been writing things down, cooking with my mother, and also my children cooking with my mother. So we have 3 generations. And there's something really, really special about intergenerational cooking.
That's really nice. Look, I wish I could do it with my mum, but my mum, sorry mum, is the worst cook.
Sorry, Mum.
But you know what? I've taken on that role, and I cook up Christmas brunches. I cook everything, and she just enjoys. So you know what?
Well, tradition can start at any time, right? You can start.
It can.
You can start your culinary traditions.
Yeah, I've started the traditions with my own family, myself, and
Aldi.
And Aldi. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Helen. Always fabulous tips. And that is it for this episode of The Weekend Briefing. If you enjoyed the chat with Froomes as much as I did, I would love to hear your feedback. Give us a review, share it with a mate, and while you're at it, you can rate and review every episode. And we will be back in your headphones on Monday with headlines and a deep dive. Catch you next week.
Listener.